Yeah, at the last minute, Kathleen was like, do we really need microphones? I was like, how can you deny microphones? Well, thank you all for making it tonight. This has been a really special show, and it's been really amazing to get to know Kathleen and her work. And it was about a year ago that Jessica maybe sent me images, said, maybe this is somebody you might want to pay attention to. And I was busy, and so at the moment I was like, okay, I'll open that email. And like literally, I didn't even open the email for like a month because it's just, it's life is hard. So, but I opened it, and I really was taken by them. But when they arrived, I first put a couple in a group show that I did in Berlin last summer, and when they arrived, this paper that she uses, this printer's paper that she uses, really I was like, whoa, this is jarring. This is. I'm so used to all of these, delicate, papers used for sumi inks and things like that, and so it really sort of defined what I'd been seeing, images of, like digitally. So, but to see them in person, they really have this. They really attacked me. I think it was then getting to know her, and it was really where I started to think about how, wow, like she looks at this world almost as dark as I do, or maybe darker, because I'm really like humor and despair are just endlessly hand in hand for me, and I'm sorry to my girlfriend about that, but and so I don't want to define the way Kathleen exactly sees it, but it seemed I was wondering why I was reacting to it much, because it's the stories and things and suggestives and people in these things are they're very affecting to me. So anyway, so I really want to thank Jessica for bringing the show to me and then agreeing to curate it, and I think she just did a fantastic job of working to pick material with Kathleen. And so anyway, so if I didn't introduce myself, I'm Sean Meredith. I'm the director of the gallery. So this is Jessica Hough, the curator. She's been a curator at numerous museums, and her last long-term gig was she was a curator, one of the main curators for the California Historical Society. One of the last shows she curated wasn't even with the society, but it was this beautiful show that she did at La Plaza during LA, the PST shows about Chicano murals in LA. That was amazing. And then, of course, our artist, Kathleen Henderson. I'm going to stop babbling and send it off to you guys.
Thank you, Sean.
And let's see.
Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, something like that.
Thank you.
Is that okay height for you?
Yeah, I think, yeah. Okay.
Can everybody hear okay? With these big microphones in front of us in this tiny room?
He said we needed them for the audio, so we have to do it.
So that, it's required.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. This is really fun, and it's a great culmination, I think, of this exhibition in its final week. And this has been a great opportunity for me to work with Kathleen, even though Kathleen and I have known each other for 12 or 13 years.
We met taking out the garbage at Mills College.
We did meet taking out the garbage at the trash cans. And became friends, and of course I was familiar with Kathleen's work for all these years, and spent a lot of time having dinners with her and visiting with her, and followed her work closely. This was the first time that I really had a chance to work with Kathleen on an exhibition, so it really opened up my understanding of Kathleen's work. But I also realized as I was formulating some questions for tonight that it's also the first time I'm going to have an opportunity to ask you something sort of more directly. So I plan to learn something tonight about your work that I don't know. And I hope this will be illuminating for everybody here as well. There's a lot of places we could start, I suppose.
You can pick one.
Yeah, and I guess one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about is your sort of characteristic line and your approach to drawing. Which, although your work has, changed over the last 10 years as I've seen it, your commitment to the oil stick and your sort of clear love and love of drawing and your sort of enjoyment of that experience of the oil stick and the paper is really clear. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that material.
I had a show, one of my first shows, solo shows, before this work was a show of very quiet drawings of pencil. It was sort of lost and found line, a lot of erasure, a lot of whiteout. They were very quiet and faint. It was at that gallery Bella used to work at, and I thought it was a pretty good show, and people didn't really get it. They were very quiet drawings, and they're like, yeah, they're okay, but I don't really, what are you talking about? And I thought it was so obvious. It was about loss of intuition and loss of instinct, and it was so clear to me, and I was like, what do you mean you don't get it? And then I realized if I wanted people to get what I had to say, I had to bump it up. I had to bump up the narrative, and I had to bump up the line, and I do want to be understood. And so I felt like, okay, you don't get it, I'll make sure you get it. And so I kind of bumped it up, and then that was super fun.
Well, the line, yeah. I mean, that's interesting, the idea of bumping it up. I mean, the line is you're not pussyfooting around. I mean, you really draw with that. And you pick a tool that's not a little pencil. Right. You have something that makes a wide.
Yeah, when Sean was talking about the
thick
paper,
line.
I sort of, for many years, only would work with post-consumer paper. It was paper that I had to get kind of at the dump. There's this place in Oakland called the Depot, and it's paper that people give because I didn't want to buy paper. And so I would buy, 4 inches of paper for $5, and then I could just really be free to make all these drawings. But it's kind of shiny paper, and you have to work with something that can really lay into it. And so I found my one indulgence is these Sennelier pastels that are really greasy, and when you hold them, they get kind of warm, and you can move so fast with them that you can make a mark before you can correct yourself. Your brain is on some other place, and so I really love those oil sticks because surprising myself is something that I always want to do, and if you're moving slow, you make decisions and you correct yourself and you second guess. But if you're moving really fast, if you're moving faster, you make a lot of mistakes, but you can make discoveries that you would not have made if you were moving slower.
And you make a lot of drawings. Mm-hmm. You make a lot of drawings, and you veer on the side of making a lot of work and then just discarding work that doesn't feel right or doesn't feel resolved.
And there's always work in every show that I came really close to throwing out, and then people like you come and look at it and are like, well, this one's in the show. I was like, oh, I wasn't going to do that. No. So I don't always know what people are going to respond to, which is why it's so great to have someone curate your show for you. But that wall in there, the outtakes, is because I do work a lot, and I feel like when you do a drawing or any kind of work of art, you want to give the viewer something. You don't want to give it all away, otherwise there's nothing else for the viewer to do. But you want to give a little away. You want to surprise yourself. You want to leave some room. And those pieces in there I did a drawing that I either gave too much away or not enough away, and there was no room to finish it off. But there was some part of the page that stuck, that rang true, and so I would cut those out. So I have this frame in my studio that I put on top of a drawing that I know is not a keeper, and I move it around kind of like Ouija board style, like is there something sticking to the page or not? And mostly not, if I don't want to, but enough that there's 175 drawings in there.
It's been really interesting to see how responsive people are to that wall and to. Yeah, I mean, the cropping is unusual, mm-hmm. and your range of drawing, mm-hmm. and the different kind of subjects, and.
Yeah, I think I was wondering why people are into that wall so much, and someone had written that it was like mainlining the last 5 years of news in one wall, but it's kind of mirrors what we have to do every day, right? We have to take in all this information, good information, bad information. Like there's a cookie monster over there, and there's like. A satellite tower. There's a lot going on there. But as you go through your day, as you have conversations, even as I have this conversation with you now, I'm actually thinking about other things at the same time, and I'm sure I'm not alone in that. And so I think that wall kind of reflects how we have to navigate every day, all this information that's coming, and also like, I smell popcorn. Is there still popcorn left? And like everything that you are kind of moving through, navigating.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to pick up on is you said something about, a drawing giving too much away or not giving enough away. And I guess it'd be interesting to hear you talk about what you think is a successful drawing, because it's obviously not just something that is rendered in a way that you think is effective, but there's something happening inside the drawing that...
Yeah, I think for me, a drawing is successful if it's, what was it, 2 weeks ago that Donald Trump said he wanted to bomb Iranian cultural sites? And I was just so mad I wanted to throw up. It was just so shitty and just so shitty. And I thought, I'm just going to go draw Iranian cultural sites. I'm just going to go in my studio and draw them, which I started to do. And they weren't very good, and they weren't very interesting. I tried, and they look like Iranian cultural sites, but there was something it was just too on the nose. It didn't leave enough for anybody to do. And then I thought, well, can I really lay claim to Iranian cultural sites anyway? Like, is it mine to draw? And what's mine to draw? I ended up drawing, and I think that's the thing, like whatever your idea is, you go into the studio and then that idea leads to something better. Like usually the ideas I go into the studio with aren't very good. They're really heartfelt, but they're not very good.
Sort of like, so do you feel like you're almost doing first draft? Like you do something, like they run a cultural site and they're like, oh, it's too straight up, it's too obvious. And then you have to like keep drawing to get something.
Right, but it's a real sweet spot to find like what resonates, what gives narrative, what is mine to give, and what leaves something for all of you. And that's hard to find that it's a sliver actually of space to do. I ended up that night drawing, there's this kid's book called Robert the Rose Horse, and it's about this horse that's allergic to roses. And he becomes a police horse, and he wears a police uniform, and he walks on two legs, and it's just the freakiest looking horse. I don't know how I got from Iranian culture science to Robert the Rose Horse.
Yeah.
Well, I do know, because they're ruins. A lot of these cultural sites are ruins, and there's a lot of space in between the ruins, and there's these beautiful, like griffin-like characters that are amazing, and it reminded me of Robert the Rose Horse. And then I thought I should put him in like a Western setting, because I felt like I should, like, what's American? Like the Wild West. So I ended up drawing Robert the Rose Horse.
Well, there are a couple of horses at least on this wall, and there's a lot of animals in the show.
Yeah, I read this book a long time ago, John Berger's Why Look at Animals. I don't know if any of you have read his book. It's one of my favorite books, and he wrote it in early 80s, and it talked about how after the Industrial Revolution, all our relationships to the natural world were really mitigated, and our relationship to animals was a really big part of that. And so I think about that a lot, and I think that we need animals to help us navigate our humanity and our animal selves.
Yeah. And then I guess that also connects, maybe it's a good time to segue to some of the work in this show and the theme of some of the heavier themes of extinction and doom. There's both that part of animals that we need to interact with to understand our humanity, and then this also way that we're a threat.
Yeah,
a constant threat.
Such a bummer to talk about. And I don't want to bum everybody out, but we are in this age of extinction, and we're in really bad shape, and we need to talk about it, and we need to do stuff about it. And 1 million animals are in jeopardy, and we've lost something like 50% of the animals in the last 100 years, and we need to talk about it and do what we can about it. I just read this story from Tanzania about a bird, and I read it a couple of years ago, and I didn't understand it. It's about a magical bird, and this magical bird flies into this village, and it's a beautiful bird, and the people love it. But the next day, you realize that this magical bird has eaten all the crops, and they're like, "Oh man, we got to get rid of this magical bird." And so the head village person says, "We got to go kill that bird." And so they get the strong people in the town to go kill the bird, and it sits in this tree. And when they go to kill the bird, it sings this really beautiful song. It sings this song about things that have left and are never coming back. And it's so beautiful that the people with their machetes who have gone to cut down the tree can't cut down the tree. They just get kind of limp, and they're like, oh, that bird's so beautiful, and they can't kill the bird. And so they go get the young men in town. They're like, we'll get the really young men. They'll really want to kill the bird, because now, like, it's another day, and the bird has, like, eaten the goats and, like, gone into their winter stores and really devastating their village. And so the men go, and they're going to kill the bird, and they go to the tree. They're going to cut down this tree, and they're going to kill the bird. And the bird sings the beautiful song, and they're just like, we can't kill that bird. The bird is so beautiful. And so the village person's super bummed out. Is like, you're supposed to do it. I'll get the children. And so they get the children, and the next night they go, and the children go to the bird, and the bird starts singing the beautiful song, and the children just don't care. And they cut down the tree, and the tree falls on the bird, and the bird dies. And I feel like that's where we're at right now. The children are going to have to kill the bird. And it's like Greta Thunberg is, the children are going to have to kill the bird.
That's a very strange story on a lot of levels.
I know, but
I thought we didn't want to kill the bird at the beginning, but no.
I didn't understand the story when I read it. It's only in the last couple of years that I've understood what the bird is. Capitalism or surveillance capitalism or late stage capitalism, whatever you want to say. And we haven't been able to kill the bird, and the children are going to have to do it. And we have to help them. It's a good story. I think my point is we need birds, we need animals to kind of to be our metaphors for life, and it was that way for a really long time.
Yeah,
that animals helped us chart our way through.
Yeah, and stories.
Yes.
I mean, I think that the you telling me that story made me think about the other kinds of stories that are kind of embedded in your work. There's a lot of Greek there's mythological characters in this exhibition.
Yeah. There's
Artemis of
Ephesus, who's an amazing, she is the goddess of children and pregnant women, and she is a guardian of women in labor. And I just think and that temple was there for 3,000 years, or in some people say longer. And it's a temple for women. I feel like we need a temple for women on our border right now. And I was reading yesterday that a lot of important people went to this temple, like Cleopatra went to this temple, and St. Paul, St. John, Mark Antony, and the Virgin Mary lived nearby. It's like, what?
Something funny about that.
She lived nearby? I never think of the Virgin Mary living nearby. Somebody's
in
neighbor.
Greece? Yeah.
But, she is a cult figure, and what if we organized our societies around temples that protected women? Mm-hmm. I think instead of what we have organized our societies around.
Yeah.
So she's,
So you're reviving her, you're bringing her back to kind of make that suggestion. And she's at the start of the show, if you remember the drawing, when you walk inside, she's got a microphone. Yeah. She's standing in front of a kind of a velvet
curtain.
Yeah,
I felt like, what if she did stand up,
to disarm people so she wasn't so threatening.
Yeah.
As a woman, because a woman with a microphone is so terrifying.
And that was the thing, who gets, that's the thing. Well, that's kind of a mix-up of Leda and the Swan and Artemis, because, Zeus would come down as the swan and rape somebody, or Leda, and then it's and that's this great story that we always tell. It was amazing when Zeus turned into a swan. It's not really a great story.
Yeah.
So...
Well, you're turning some stories on their heads here, and maybe we should talk a little bit about this series, because it does seem like the works on this wall, which you refer to as your team building series, do start to turn some of those things, on their heads. And before we go any further and talk about that, I should mention that we're talking about team building series and other kinds of series, but I wonder how much these works end up kind of coming together after the fact versus you being kind of conscious of creating a kind of...
I think for this series and for other series, it's something I do for a couple of weeks.
They do come in succession. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
team building is something that a lot of different people do it, but corporations do it to sort of rally the troops to go out and better work together to exploit the masses and feel good about it. And I just wanted, who makes these rules? Who decides to make sure that those things get enacted? Who decides to bundle all those mortgages? Who decides to take the nurses' retirement plans? And then they go out in the woods and do some team building shit and feel good about it and never have to go to jail. So that's what I'm mad about. But I also feel like I was thinking about this drawing right here, which is like I wanted in some of the team building. It was like, okay, I want them to be in an office because I want to place it like these decisions are getting made in offices by certain people, and maybe they shouldn't be making the decisions. And then I thought, well, who's making the decisions, and how are we all complicit in it? And so this drawing, there's nobody in clothes, so you can't say like, oh, they're office workers or they're business people. It's like we're all complicit in some way, and so how can we understand our complicity and change that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it's, we live in this capitalist society, and what are we going to do individually to change that? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'm one of those, and there you'll have to guess which one.
Well, that sort of brings me to the question of kind of art making in this moment. And, what does it mean to make art in this kind of moment where it does feel, you're doing it in a way I don't even have to ask the question of you, but I guess maybe it's a broader question, not specifically maybe
like
just for
role?
you, but what is a role of an artist, and what does it feel like, whatever your art is like, whether it's abstract or figurative and whether it has political content or not, but what does it feel like to be an artist making work in this time?
After Trump got elected, at first I felt like I came up fighting and I was going to draw my way through it, and it got so bad so quickly that I really was despairing. I just felt like we are fucked. And I would go to my drawing board and that I've had for like 20 years, and I would just like put my head on it like, oh no, like how can drawing actually help? And so I didn't draw for a while. I would just kind of put my head on the drawing board like night after night, and then I was like, well, fuck, I can't not do it. It's just painful not to work, and it does help me kind of process what's happening. But I also feel like there's no time for despair. Like, it's like the end here. There's no room for despair. And if you're despairing, just get over it and figure out how to do something, whatever it is. And I think what I've learned in the last couple of years is that these small actions really help. Like small fundraising things. We've been doing fundraisers for Kids in Need of Defense. It's an organization that helps kids coming up from the border. These small donations, like helping the Navajo Nation get out the vote, it really helps. The margin of where we're at in the next election is really small. So those small actions, I think, are really going to help. So if everybody here does one small thing and tells their coworker about it, although my coworkers are sick of hearing about it. We were talking about that today, Jessica, like in the workplace, what can you talk about? And
it's and that's, what's nice is when you have like an exhibition of work, it gives you an opportunity. It gives you kind of a platform to then also talk about things, and it's kind of because you're also talking about your work, and so it becomes maybe somehow more permissible and
right. It provides,
and we're letting people into the work.
Right.
Yeah.
The question is, I always wonder, in talking about the outtakes and talking about this work, is how much can people handle and still look at the work and not. Can you think of people that you are talking about things that you really care about, but you can't really handle the work? I sometimes think of Kara Walker as one of those people who her work is super important, but it's really hard to look at.
Yeah.
Or Tala Madani, who's an amazing painter. Super hard work to take in. And then the other question is like, well, who cares if they can't take it, right? But if you're speaking to people, you want them to listen. It was like that earlier thing where I did that show and nobody got the work. I was like, well, all right, I will make sure you get it.
Yeah.
But you can go too far, I think.
Yeah, I don't think that happens so much in your work, and I don't experience it that way. I think because they're also funny and they're weird, and it's not so direct, that there's access points and ways of exploring the work that, that you've left these openings, you've left these entry points.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point, especially now in this age of surveillance capitalism, where everything we do is sort of watched, and everything we buy is kind of cataloged, and people know what we want. And if you, like, probably when you go home tonight on your Instagram feed, there'll be something about extinction, or, we're being kind of targeted all the time. And I think what I'm learning more is you guys are as important as me, because you're the viewer. And that is this really important moment of taking control of, like, looking at a work of art, maybe this or maybe another work of art, is a way of, it's a reclamation, a taking back, I think.
Being a viewer and taking in the work is a way of taking back. Can you say more about that? What do you mean, taking back?
Don't you feel like in a lot of ways we're being commodified? And like roaming around a gallery or a museum is kind of a weird thing to do, is to, like, look out the window all morning, or go to a gallery and look.
Right. Yeah, right. No, and in that way, then I do know exactly what you mean. Yeah. It's become a kind of sacred space in a way. I mean, the museum, I think, to me, has always been a kind of sacred space. It's a space where you can be alone. Also, you can explore. You can kind of have a very different kind of experience than you have anywhere else.
Yeah.
Except maybe in nature or something like that.
I have kind of an old iPhone. It's like an iPhone 5. It's kind of a shitty phone, and I don't use it that much. And I'm on Instagram a little bit, but not that much. And when I came and hung the show and had the opening, I took a few pictures around LA, and then I got back to town, and I woke up Monday morning, and my phone said, "You have new memories." And somehow there was like a little slideshow of my trip to LA with little graphics and stuff. I was like, you don't know about my memories. Like, and who are you? Who put this little memory slideshow together? And I feel like that's happening increasingly, and it's really insidious. And I feel like being an artist, but also looking at art is becoming radical. I mean, it's always radical. But.
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, in a way, doing any kind of experience that you can do where you're not consuming or spending money, it becomes a kind of radical act, I think.
And I know that the art world and the art market is a lot about money, but a lot of it isn't about money. Like, you can come here for free, and you can look at art, and you can go to museums. It's not always free, but you can get there on free day, and it's important.
Absolutely. That's good.
It's more important now than ever, I feel like.
Mm-hmm. Does anyone want to lob a question into the room?
If you don't have questions, I'm going to start asking you guys questions.
And she's serious.
I'll ask a question.
Okay.
It's not a new question. It's been asked for decades. But if your work has a very strong political vein, if you're driven to this work, and you're trying to find that place where it's not too much or not enough, what do we owe you in looking at it? Meaning, do you see it as a call to action? And if all we do is come to a gallery and look at it and go, oh wow, we're on the same page as Kathleen, and go home and don't change, does your work mean less? Or you get the question?
Yeah, I get the question, and I think historically, like, where can I fit myself historically in terms of that? And there's a lot of precedent for, and I think that's why I stubbornly stick to drawing, because I feel like drawing has always been I'm really fond of the people who did drawings in the French Revolution, and how they actually affected change. There's no way to know what viewers will do or what they won't do, but it starts a conversation, and I think images, especially images like these that have a little bit of narrative, will hopefully stick in your brain a little bit, and you might think about them next week, or you might think about them a year down the road. But it is actually not enough, and that's why these drawings on the other side are a benefit for Get Out the Vote. I feel like we're in a really, it's an emergency right now. So whatever you do, if you're a nurse or an artist or whatever you do, like, it's time to get on it. So, yeah, I hope that the work does spur that. I don't know, sometimes think, oh, I wasn't strong enough, and that drawing right there is, I was like, oh, that's a really difficult drawing. It's the Rape of Ephesus, and I feel like she's kind of a stand-in for Mother Earth, and we are really raping Mother Earth right now, and I wasn't going to include that one. It's hard to know, like, how far to go, and so, do you think you will do anything differently after seeing the show?
Put me on the spot. I already have. It's funny. I mean, just because of the team building series, I have talked to people about team building and talk about late stage capitalism, a symbol for how it's all gone wrong. They think they can just go do a team building exercise and take on the world when it doesn't solve the core of what the problem is at all. So
Right.
yeah.
Hello. Yes.
People like team building.
Yeah.
You know? Should we do a team building exercise? Like, no.
Yeah. Team building's weird.
When I came in, I saw on your drawings here, what attracted me was your palette.
Oh.
Because it was all kinds of colors going everywhere, and you also allowed space to be a part of your drawings, and I really like that a lot because it allows me to focus on what is in front of me, pull more out of it, and there's all kinds of stuff going on around it, or all kinds of different colors. I think you're right, that is how it's
Yeah, well, I think for a long time, I have 3 kids and I've always worked. I haven't had a lot of time. I don't have unending days in the studio, and I have a lot to say, and I really like to work. Like, my usual studio practice is I get up, I go to work, I come home 5 o'clock, and I work in the studio till 7. And so it's not a lot of time, but I've been kind of building on it all day. I'm thinking about it all day, like, what am I going to draw when I get to the studio? And so just working in black and white allows me to do a lot quickly. But then I work in an amazing place called Creative Growth, which is a studio for artists with disabilities, and there's so much color in that building. So I started to feel a little bit like a chicken shit. Like, why aren't I putting any color in my work? So I started kind of with just these kind of pink stains, and then these sickly greens kind of work their way in. And an artist I really like is Pontormo. He's a mannerist. I think I owe a lot of color to Pontormo's palette. It's kind of gross and sexy at the same time, and sinuous, and yeah. Gross and sexy.
I just wanted to say thank you, because sometimes, when you're going through this turmoil and not like, is there anybody else that thinks like me? So the cynicism of this and the simplicity is beautiful. It's just like, wow, it really spoke to me, and I really appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you. Bibo, aren't you going to throw me some ringer? Okay.
But I do think the whole question of exactly at what point, and your response was one, but when the color started to come back in and how it has, and what those questions, like in terms of being a drawing person, they must come up.
Yeah, I feel kind of stubbornly stuck to drawing, and even when I do add color, this is kind of an embarrassing confession, but I have a piece of paper on the side of my drawing board, and I take my stick and make like a little blob, and then I take a paintbrush and kind of get some paint on my blob, from that blob, and then I use that to paint, because I refuse to like get paint and paintbrushes because, and do it that way, because I feel like somehow that's like, painters are decorative or something. I know, it's stupid and stubborn, but I'm stupid and stubborn sometimes.
Well, I think a couple of people have commented when I've been walking them through your exhibition that although there is this kind of painterly effect that you get from the turpentine with the oil stick, when you get up close, it's flat. So in other words, it looks like a brush stroke, but then you
Yeah.
come to it, and because it's not really paint on there,
Mhm.
it doesn't have a texture really.
Right, it's more like a stain.
It's like a stain. And I like that about it. I think if you were using paint, it would be such a different.
It would be a totally
It would
different
be a
thing. It would have to be about
completely
paint.
different thing.
And I feel like
Yeah.
stains are kind of embarrassing. Like, so when you think of stains, it's like you peed yourself, or you like dribbled your coffee on yourself. Like stains are embarrassing,
Yeah,
and I kind of
yeah.
want to embarrass people and embarrass myself.
Well, the colors are there's something unsettling
Yeah.
often about the combination of colors and the way the colors use. So I think it heightens the kind of emotional tenor of some of them. Like I'm looking at these here, and they're very strange, and the combination of colors in the one on the left is sort of disturbing. But it really works because it seems very like there's something
Yeah.
strong. Wrong.
I had some work photographed for a book, and I didn't know this photographer very well, and I got the photographs back, and he had kind of taken all the stains out. He was like, "We don't want those stains, do you?" I was like, "Well, yes, I do want those stains. Could you put them back, please?"
You mean like smudges and
Yeah, or like,
Yeah.
like, there was just like a few little things here and there, and
Yeah.
he was just like, "Oh, those are mistakes, right?" I was like, "Those are not
there
mistakes."
are no mistakes.
Yeah, that's supposed to embarrass you, and you were embarrassed. That's why you took it out.
Do you have another question?
The writing in your drawings and where you source it, and how much is you, and how much is lifted, and what makes you decide to include writing?
Yeah, I was thinking about how it was, to go hang the show and go back to the Bay Area and then come back. I almost feel like they're not it's like somebody else did this. There's a real disconnect after making work, and it's like, God, who did this work? And I feel like that's true with the writing, that the writing kind of just comes out unconsciously, and some of it is lifted from like old National Geographics, and some of it is just pops up while you're working. Some of it is things my dad said, and some of it is music lyrics, and some of it is I'm listening to the radio while I work, and some of it is
With this one.
yeah. I don't even know where that came from.
Someone else wrote that.
Yeah, I think, because I used to look at a lot of really old National Geographics because they're so weird. And I think it probably came out of that because it reads like that, kind of strange. But that, there is this trilogy that I really love that Bibo turned me on to. Amitav Ghosh wrote this book, the Ibis Trilogy, about the 100 Years' War, the Opium War. And it was kind of like the beginning of this kind of global capitalism where, the British made India grow the heroin and then made China be addicted to it. And India was like, well, we don't really do this anymore. And China was like, we don't really want to be addicted anymore. And Brits were like, this is free will, this is capital, this is God's will. And it's like, well, really? Like, really? And they fought for over 100 years, they fought over that. And they lost. And that's why Hong Kong is Hong Kong. And so that drawing is about that. It's like this kind of undying faith in like free capital. Mm-hmm. It's like 100 years they fought over that.
I'm curious about, when I look at the work, I feel like you have such a strong narrative going on when you're doing it that, maybe I get a slice of it. But there's like a deep, narrative that's rooted in a whole long story that comes out that you have. Do you ever think about, trying to express that in some way, like, with like a little, excerpt or something?
You mean like a book or a movie or something?
Like, I feel like each piece should have like a page next to it of like free association, like.
That's your job.
Well,
as a viewer.
Interview about each one. And to the other person's point, like, what's the call to action in each, in each series, in each, you know, because it's there and it's strong and you want it,
Mm-hmm.
you think it's important, and you're putting it out there, and the images are you know, they're pleasing. So there's, you know, even somebody who's not into art is gonna want to look at this, and somebody that's not political at all is gonna want to look at it, but that's only a tiny piece of what you're trying to do. And I feel like if you were able to add maybe somebody else writes them, I don't know. Maybe you get, you know, you get interviewed on each one,
Yeah.
and somebody writes a thing. But I feel like that you're robbing the audience of their ability to like use it as a catalyst, which it seems like kind of part of what you want to do.
But the fact that you're so aggravated about it means that I've been successful in like sort of picking your imagination, and like that you will go home and think like, what the hell are those two people doing in the woods? And so, thank you.
Well, we discussed walking the line.
Yeah.
Too much or too little, and that's...
Right,
that's
and you don't want
exactly-
to preach, and I've certainly made those drawings where it's a house floating in water, or it's a forest on fire. I've done those drawings. And it's like, well, we all know that. We all know the floods are coming and that the earth is burning, and what good is that? So you have to leave something for the viewer, and also something for myself. I don't always know what's going on in these drawings. You know, it comes from a place kind of deep in my I know some of them are more specific, like there's one over there with vans. There's like two ghosts by a van. I'm really scared of vans. Like, I just think bad things happen in vans, and I'm afraid of men in vans, and I'm just afraid of vans. So, like, that's what that's about. But maybe you wouldn't know that when you look at that. That's, you know, that's kind of a question I felt like asking you guys, like, what do you see? Because I don't know what you see. It seems like every time I have a show, there's a piece that everybody wants. And Zeph, you got that piece over there that's like, someone came in like 2 minutes after you and was like, I want that piece. I was like, and then someone came over and said, I want that piece. It was like, well, I just sold that piece, and why do y'all want that piece?
Yeah, the
Why do you like that
green
piece?
rain piece?
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems to be.
Why do you like that piece?
Personally?
Yeah. Personally.
Tell us.
Oh, I spilled
you
my
know,
wine.
There's a creepiness to the people that drew me in, that where they're kind of like, I'm talking about this thing here with the rain, the green rain, and this piece there, and the.
Gallers, just take it off.
And there's something about especially the person on the left, you know, it reminds me a little bit of my aunt. My sister. Like, just kind of like a very, like, just a very odd character.
Yeah.
In this, I'm trying to be articulate with what I actually mean. They're lost and mischievous at the same time. They're lost.
Yeah.
You know, it's like they're lost in this play that they're in that they're not really drivers of. It's like they're kind of can't find their spot in the world, it feels like. And there's something that was drawn to me about this, like, we're misfits, and here we are.
Right.
And we're out here. It's not like we're misfits and we're, you know, gonna go sit in a room and watch TV and you'll never see us. It's like we're misfits. We don't really understand our place in the world. We don't really understand maybe ourselves or how you see us, but here we are.
And it's
That's
raining
pretty,
green.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought people liked it because there's just like a tiny bit of sex appeal in it. Like she just like moves her hip a little bit, like we're lost. Yeah, we're like lost in the green rain, and there's nothing we can do about it. And I think that kind of powerlessness is something that I definitely feel, and I imagine everybody else feels too, right? Like, how are we going to turn this ship around? Thanks, Steph. Sean?
You know, these characters are like the way they're interacting with each other and with the viewer. I mean, so often they're looking right at the viewer, and so we're quickly reacting to all their body language, and their faces can be a little, can be a little plain. They can have some little smirks, but a lot of them are pretty plain face. So a lot of their body language feels to me expressing some of the emotions going on. So that's the part that really is so, maybe we're humans and we're reacting to people, but the way they react, the way they interact with each other, and then slowly over time, the complexities of how you compose them and their backgrounds, and especially the landscapes, I find it's quite interesting how you compose the things around them, or decide not to, the open space. So I'm not sure how to ask about how these things come together when these compositions, because when I see like just even a little video of you coming up with a line, I'm like, geez, how's that all gonna go?
I don't always know, which is the good thing. But I have thought of putting more space in the drawings and locating a space, because I feel like in order to have some kind of sense of belonging, you need to locate a space. I used to not do that. The work used to be just more central, and it was like two figures acting out some histrionic shit. And then I just wanted to expand it. And I lived in the woods for 10 years in kind of a tree house. And that kind of was a leafy experience. And so it started working its way into the work. But I think in terms of the gesture and the figures, I feel like, I say a lot with a little with the masks, but I feel like you need to give something to everybody in the drawing that they can connect with, and that might be like a kneecap that they recognize, like that guy's kneecap. Like, I've seen kneecaps like that, or my kneecap's like that. I feel like if you don't give people something to hang their hat on like that they know, then there's no buy-in, So that's what's been interesting about drawing the ghosts. Like, what's going to be people's buy-in for that? Because we're not ghosts yet. And so there's always some part of the drawing that I try and get that people will have a palpable touch to, like the couch, the outdoor couch. It's like, well, everybody wants an outdoor couch. Or the chairs, the two ghosts in a chair, right? Like those old chairs, you know what your legs look like after you've sat on those chairs for an hour. There's something for everyone.
How often do you end up someplace entirely else at the end of a drawing, like where you start drawing something and you're doing an arm and you've got a figure, and then by the time you're done, it's like you had no idea that's where you were going? How often
that
does
happens
that happen?
all the time, but not within one drawing, within like a series of drawings. So I usually do like 5 to 10 drawings in a sitting, and so I'll start out with Iranian cultural sites, and I'll end up with Robert the Rose Horse over a few drawings.
And there's something that allows you to leap from one drawing to the next, where you finish a drawing and then that starts, like, something else is starting as you're finishing the one to get to the next one, to the next one.
Right, yeah, so and that's what I hope I always can do, is surprise myself.
Yeah.
If I go into the studio and draw, there's this project I've been wanting to do forever about Reynard, which is this story maybe you've heard of. It's this ancient story Aesop told of this fox, this tricky fox, and it's really a Trumpian character, and it's been told over and over again. And every time I propose a grant proposal or like a residency, I always pitch the Reynard, because it's such a good pitch, and I never draw it.
Why do you think you never draw it?
I don't know, it's too ripe or something, or one day maybe I'll do it, but it's like I'll start drawing Reynard and then I'll be drawing Iranian cultural sites, or, it'll go somewhere else.
So it always leads you. It's the thing that leads you.
And so, but if you're trying to pitch something for a residency, it's like,
It sounds like you really know what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
it does, and
yeah.
I can
Yeah,
make,
because
you
you've been
know,
trying to do it for
yeah.
so long. Like, oh, she knows.
Yeah, like Goethe did
And then
it, and
you-
so-and-so did it, and it's like, but I know when I'm writing it, probably never gonna, never gonna draw
Just
Rain
gotta
Art.
get there. Just gotta get to the rest.
Get there,
See.
and then I can do something else. Don't tell anybody I told you that.
And there's one really profound thing about this whole show, which is, unlike a great deal of art today, it actually is the wily fox that moves straight through the questions of identity politics. So it's political, but it's not rested on the huge discussions about race, and even gender. I mean, she addresses them, but it's very nuanced way that she approaches what it might start out as the Iranian cultural polemic. She moves through it, and I find it amazing because there's very little art out there that's in that category.
It's bigger. It has a bigger scope. Yeah.
It's open to like almost everybody.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be, you know, a trans black woman to get it. You don't have to be a white man to get it. It's not
Yeah.
based on those things that we are like talking about and struggling with now.
Mm-hmm.
But it addresses like the issues that come out that we all have to live with that are based on some of that.
Mhm.
Anyway,
Mhm.
I just find she has this lovely little path she goes through.
Well, that's really intentional, is to make it open to a lot of people, and that's why it's a little cartoony, or there's like, you know, you understand it. It's something you can get, because I do want there to be this, you don't have to have gone to art school or read art theory, that you can get it, hopefully. I used to hang my drawings in this pizzeria. Chris, I think, had seen my drawings in the bathroom, and it was
I would make my friends go to the different bathroom.
yeah, and it was a very popular pizzeria, like 100 people a night, and people would go in there and like close the door and take a breather from their friends and take their pants down and look at the work. A lot of people saw that work, and I love that you could see that people could get it. And I met a guy the other night who said, I know your work, I saw it in this pizzeria. And I was like, well, what drawing was it? And he said it was a drawing of a coffin. And I'd totally forgotten about this drawing. And under the coffin it said, it's a long time in the box. And that's something my dad used to say. And I thought, like, is that a one-liner? But it's a one-liner about eternity, so maybe those like cancel each other out.
Yeah.
And he said it changed his life, and he would go there more for the drawing than for the pizza, because it was like a, you know, call to arms. It's a long time in the box. I'd totally forgotten that I had done that drawing, so I was glad he told me.
Are most or all of these one-day works, or do you go back and work into it if something is fascinating you, or if you think that you can correct it or make it, you know, more pointed or obscured?
I often do like between 3 and 5 versions of the same drawing, sometimes 10, to get it right. It's almost always the first one, and I throw the other ones away, which is like I should know by now. I think, what if I do it this way? What if I do it that way? What if what if they're in the woods? What if they're in the parking lot?
I'm going to follow up with something about that, because my first impression of looking at these, when I first walked in the gallery a few weeks ago, I thought for sure that they were limestone lithographs.
Oh yeah,
They really look like it.
They
And
do.
I found out your process is basically like how you would make that drawing on a limestone lithograph, because you're usually using a grease pencil
yeah,
to do that job.
yeah. They look like lithographs.
But I was wondering if there are images that you're attached to enough that you'd be interested in doing variations, like if there's some things that you feel are like, I mean, there have to be some that you're like, oh my God, this image like you know, really resonates with me in a way I'd like to maybe keep the figures and change the background and do it a few different ways.
No.
Yeah.
because it's so much fun to draw, I don't need to print them. You know, I can just change it up myself. But I would like to maybe do a lithograph if for a benefit. I was thinking, you know, it's great to have these. I probably won't do that again, but I do want to keep raising money, and I do want to make work affordable for people who don't have more money. And so I would want to do a poster that I could use to raise money and also make a bunch of work. The thing about lithographs is you have to draw backwards, and I just can't do that. So I don't know how to do that. Maybe someone could do it for me, or there's some process that you can do, but every time I do it, I've done a few lithographs for benefits, and it's like, it's backwards. It just never works. It just doesn't work for me. So, but yeah.
Can we take one more question before we break for a glass of wine?
Thank you all for coming and seeing and looking. It's been really great. It's been great to be back in LA. When I was hanging the show here, people are coming in, old people, young people, and it's such a palpable community of viewers here in LA, which isn't quite the same in the Bay Area. So it's really great to be back in LA. So thank you.